Okay, so here we go with the next section where I want to talk about scenes. How do you control scenes and how do you set up scenes? So I've reset my interface, so just kind of start from scratch with this. And you can see I've got my blank default scene. You see it says you don't have any sources before, so I can right click and do add, or I can do the plus key, which I'll do, so it'll hang up here and you'll see some of the different sources. Audio input capture, that's pretty important. It's important to understand that most of the time OBS Studio treats audio or treats cameras as here's your camera, but then also here's your audio from that camera. It treats it as separate sources. You can't just say, here's my camera, like the one I'm talking on to right now, or this webcam, and have it done. You've actually got to tell it that there's audio. So you have to actually set up your audio mixer a little bit differently, which is a little bit of a hassle, as we'll see in a minute. And the audio mixer unit is very, very important. So video capture devices that we'll kind of come down to in a minute, these are going to be real important. Those can be web cameras like I've got here, an integrated laptop camera, or a Blackmagic device, kind of got like I got here, which is an external device that takes whatever video source you got and turns it into a webcam. Those are kind of where you're going to spend the majority of your time. So you can see I've got a Blackmagic device here. OBS also lets you choose browsers, so I can actually bring in like Firefox or Microsoft Edge, not so much Chrome. Sometimes it doesn't work too well. Display capture, I can actually recapture my computer window if I've got external monitors hooked up to it or different monitors hooked up. Images and image slideshows, those are pretty cool. You can actually set up a folder with a number of pictures on your hard drive and have those cycle through, or maybe you have like a title slide or something like that. And I'll demonstrate those more in a few minutes as we keep going through this presentation. Media source, if you have a video on your computer that you want to play, you can actually add that as a media source. NDI source, this is the NewTek software that lets you bring in something if you have a video toaster in your school or whatever like that, or a TriCaster, or some other sort of video switcher. You can actually, if you can set it up as an NDI source, then OBS Studio can display it, and it's pretty cool. Text also lets you add in layers of text like phone numbers and titles and stuff separately, as we'll see in a minute. And window capture, if you have just a specific window, like maybe a PDF file or something, you can also capture that. So let me go in and start off with video capture device. And you can see it tells me, do I want to create new or add existing. And it's important to understand that when you create a video capture device, OBS is going to use that same device from scene to scene to scene. If you try to create a new capture device with, like, for instance, a little webcam right here, it can confuse OBS Studio. So I'm just going to start off with, and you have to kind of use, that's why you have the use existing or add existing that you'll see in a minute. So I'm just going to go through and reset back up those scenes I had earlier. So tell it OK. And so this is, you can see on here on my window, my UVC camera. And just, generally under the resolution and things like that, you can kind of leave that by default unless you're running into issues. So we're just going to do OK. And you can see right there. Now, if you notice, I'm talking, but nothing is happening over here. Even though it's a video capture device, it's not seeing any audio. So I've got to go back into OBS Studio, and we're going to add an audio input capture. And we'll tell it OK. And now I get my device, and so I'm going to make sure I pick the same one. There we are. AC interface. Don't have to worry about the device timestamps. And so now here is my audio from this little web camera. I can add more video devices or more things to this scene. In fact, let me do that real quick just to kind of illustrate a video capture device. I'll do my integrated web camera this time. Boink. And so you can see this one comes up at a smaller resolution than my base one. So because of that, what I have to do, if you see it's got this red box around it, now I just kind of simply drag and drop and it'll fill the screen, and it puts it up on top. I can, using my controls here, I can move it up or down, kind of reorder it like that. I can also, using this little eye control right here, I can change the visibility of it. So you can do some testing and some configuring if you need to set up some stuff in a scene. You maybe set up some pictures or some text or something that you turn on and off. And it's a pretty cool ability to do that. So the top layer is, of course, the one that is visible most of the time. Let me click that again. Miss. There we go. And one more thing I kind of wanted to mention, if you see right here in the newest OBS, you have a place that you can actually click on for properties, and it brings up your properties tab. You also have a filters. Filters are pretty cool. Filters let you do things, especially if you have audio. If you have hum in your audio, there are some audio filters that you can see right here, and you click the plus, and it brings up a couple of things. You can see, noise gate, noise suppression, which again, if you've got noise in your audio, you can do that. I can also come down here to my effect filters, and you see where it says crop pad or scrolling and aspect ratio. You can actually do some scaling and aspect ratio. You can really do some pretty cool things with OBS Studio. So I'm just going to apply this effect filter, and it gives me the choice to choose the resolution. So let's just this ought to be interesting. Oops! So now I changed it back to square on this one, so it really stretches me out there, but we don't want to do that. And so that filter will be applied to this scene and that image. You can see it's really stretched out right now, so that's kind of odd. Let me close that down so I don't distract myself with that. So that's adding filters. You can kind of play with those a little bit. Generally, you don't really have to do a filter. You can, if you want to do a lower third, you can add some stuff, maybe crop a graphic image down or something like that. So that's a base scene, but let me set up another couple of scenes and kind of show you, how this works. So this scene that you're seeing right here is kind of my web camera scene. So I'm going to just click Add a Scene, and you can see the default name is Scene 2, but we're going to add this one. We're going to call this BMD, like I had earlier for the Blackmagic device. Tell it OK, and you see the screen goes blank because it's a new scene. So I want to go ahead and, now that I've got this BMD scene added right here, I want to go ahead and add a source to it. So I'm going to tell it Video Capture Device. And if I click Add Existing, like I mentioned a minute ago, it lets me reuse a device from a previous one, but it does also bring in the filters. So now I've got this in here, and you can see it's stretched out again, which I don't want. So I can delete that source. I'm going to remove that video capture device, and I'm just going to start over from scratch. And this time I'm going to tell it a new video capture device, and it gives me my choices. And I'm going to choose Blackmagic Design, and you see it brings up my color bars that's coming from my studio system. And I'm going to tell it OK, and we're good to go. But again, I also have to, oops, wrong button. I also have to add an audio input capture, so I'm going to have to create a new one. I'm going to tell it microphone, it just calls it microphone. I'm just looking for the Blackmagic Design. So I do Blackmagic Design, do OK, and eventually if I had some audio playing through that, you would see it. So I can also add another scene. We'll call this one my NDI scene. Tell it OK. So I'm going to click here for plus. And there's my NDI source. And I get to choose here, because it knows it's an NDI source, so it's actually looking for it. Tell it OK. Now this one actually brings in audio with it, but it's one of the few that do. Most of your web cameras don't, but Blackmagic Design is actually letting it bring it in with both, and so you'll see my audio is there. But this is real important when I switch back over to my default scene. If you notice, the audio went away. So I would have to, if I wanted to use that audio, and you can see how the audio mixer switches here, and I'll go again in more detail in just a second with this, but you'll notice that the audio doesn't stay with it. So let me come back in here and let me just add let me add a video file. We'll call this video clip and give it a name. And I'm going to click on the plus key. I'm going to tell it media source. And see, it gives me a choice, a local file, which probably will. I'm going to tell it browse. So we'll just do this one, a nice little PSA that one of my students did. And open. Now it doesn't really preview, but I can tell it to loop if I need to, restart playback when it becomes active, which is probably what I have happen, and tell it OK. Now media sources also bring audio with it, which is kind of nice. and you'll see, you know, it's playing the video. So if I switch back over to my Blackmagic device, audio goes away, and then when I switch back to my video, it starts back over again. So it's real important to understand and keep in mind that scenes are actually collections of sources. So you're switching between collections of sources when you go to a different scene. Hope that will help you keep that, you know, kind of keep that separate in your mind as we move on talking about the audio mixer and a couple of the other kind of cool controls. But scenes are really where you do the majority of your actual in-stream switching and work when you're using OBS Studio.